Logan here at me and McGee Market, and with all the research I've done, turmeric and curcumin in particularly have come highly recommended as something to incorporate into our diet and lives. With that, I came across UltraCur, and that is a business right out of Oklahoma City. We're going to visit with Josh and learn a lot more about what this could do for our health. All right, Adam, Josh, thank y'all so much for joining us today. Just to kind of set this up, the way I became enamored with turmeric and curcumin and the other components of that is through our cancer journey. So my little boy was diagnosed with cancer 2019. I just really dove into what can I do to help him. Yeah. And so turmeric was a big part of what I believe matters in health. And, tracking that down, came across y'all with your company. I loved that you weren't very far from us. You're just right over in Oklahoma. And so wanted to get you on and talk about the products you have, y'all's story, and just let's meet the people behind an amazing product.
I come out of the pharmaceutical industry, so you'll have to forgive me for that. I was working with some researchers at the University of Oklahoma and the Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation that were really into natural medicine, and it's rare actually for hardcore, heavy duty National Institute of Health funded researchers to have anything to do with natural medicine, because there's almost no funding for it. The funding is for the molecular mechanisms and all that stuff. But there's some researchers that were looking at turmeric and curcumin at the Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation, and they had a simple idea. The idea was that curcumin in its extracted form turns into an aggregate, a crystal. And all of the people that were trying to help curcumin get absorbed into the body, because of all of the research around cancer and inflammation, because there's a lot of it, over 18,000 published articles about cancer and inflammation just around the turmeric and curcumin. But the problem with the curcumin is that when it's extracted, and even in the turmeric root, it's a crystal. It's an insoluble crystal that's like quartz crystals, right? So you imagine trying to take a bunch of quartz crystals into your body and hoping that you would solubilize some of the silicone that's in the quartz and get it absorbed into your system. It just doesn't happen. You have to take massive amounts of curcumin for it to absorb in the body. So all of the pharmaceutical researchers like myself out there, they put on their little formulation hats and said, well, if we're going to try to improve the absorption of curcumin, we just need to make the crystal smaller, make nanoparticles of the curcumin. When you make it something smaller, you exponentially increase the surface area. When you increase the surface area, you create more solubilization. So that's what everybody else was doing, except for these guys at the Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation. They said, look, screw that. That's a technical term.
That's right? Technical.
You have to use a screwdriver to do that. So, okay.
Screw that. We are going to drive the curcumin into a liquid matrix, which is a fancy way of saying we're just going to put it into solution. And so when it's in solution, you have single molecules of the curcumin.
Yes.
And those single molecules of the curcumin are what our bodies need, and what cancer needs, what our inflammation needs in order for it to make a difference. So we made this stuff. We sat around the table. In fact,
we'll get excited.
Old liquid tincture around here somewhere.
This is actually some of the original stuff. Right?
Nice.
From 7 years ago.
Yeah. So can you imagine guys sitting around the table doing shots of liquid curcumin and looking at each other going,
so here's one of them. And so this is still in solution and it's still viable. This was liquid curcumin that we made over 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And man, to the horror of the scientists, they were horrified.
I know.
They really were. We made some of this stuff. We got some shot glasses and we a couple of us, we tried it. And you know, the most astonishing thing about this is that we, within like 2 to 3 minutes, we had this buzzing feeling in our heads. We call it the curcumin buzz. And what was astonishing to me was that I knew at that moment that not only were those molecules of curcumin getting into my body, but for me to be feeling something in my head, meant that it was getting into my brain. So those molecules of curcumin were going through my gut, circulating it through my body, getting into my brain, and we were feeling it. And it was that turned on a switch inside my head and said, there's something different about what we're doing here. And as simple as that sounds, just creating a liquid curcumin, that drove us into a whole nother realm of research. And what that led us into was that we were able to develop something called liquid protein scaffold technology. We learned that curcumin, this is the simple insight that's patented right now, is that curcumin would bind to protein before it would bind to itself. And so we present liquid curcumin to a protein scaffold. So the molecules of curcumin bind to this protein scaffold. And as the body's digesting the protein, the curcumin is readily absorbed. Some people ask, why don't we sell, this stuff to people? And we used to, but you have to take like a 12-ounce bottle of the liquid curcumin to get the same dose that you're getting in one of our capsules. Yeah. So the liquid protein scaffold UltraCur technology is literally molecules of curcumin bound to this protein scaffold.
All right, so to just kind of regroup on what we're talking about, we've known for thousands of years through Ayurvedic medicine or whatever that turmeric, kind of the Indian, Asian cuisines that use that, they don't have a lot of the diseases that we know. That's how they treat a lot of it. So umpteen scientific studies, turmeric, curcumin, they are improved with health. The problem, our bodies can't absorb hardly any of it. So I think on one of the last...
Except, you know, in traditional Indian cuisine, what do they do with the turmeric?
They cook it and it's with fat.
They cook it in oil, and that releases the molecules of the turmeric into the oil. So that yellow color is the molecules of the curcumin.
Yeah.
And so they're getting some absorption there. But even with that, one capsule of our product is equal to over 100 grams of turmeric root.
Yeah, that's wild.
In terms of how much material you're getting into the body. So you're getting you need a lot of turmeric. You would need to eat a lot of turmeric on a daily basis.
Yeah, imagine just having a plate piled up to about here, you know, and then sticking a spoon in it and eating that powder.
Well, you'd have to cook it. I mean, but eating the powder,
That's
you'd have
true.
to have a half a kilo of the powder in order to get the same what you would absorb with one of our capsules. Or you'd have to cook it, which is just too intense for most people, in order to release the molecules out of the turmeric root into a molecular form.
And that's what makes y'all's product so intriguing, and I think kind of why it works so well. So since I have been having y'all's product at the market, I've been giving out those little packets that you sent, the little samples. 100% of people have said that they have helped. So
that's
my mom,
grandma, friends. We've got a lady that helps us. You know, she's family, more like an aunt. A lot of, being prescribed gabapentin for neuropathy and other nerve pains, and they're absolutely loving.
Hold on 1 second. Noise.
We talked to a pharmaceutical guy, but Josh, tell us a little bit about you while.
Well, yeah, and I do want to mention too that, you know, Adam is the one that actually originally educated me on these pan-population studies that they did. These are like global studies where they look at populations and they dial in to understand why in the world are the individuals in this area of the world or this area of the world not having a high incidence of Alzheimer's, of cancers, of diabetes and things like that. And they did one of these studies, several decades ago, 50s and 60s? I mean,
It was,
really
it
a
was
long
the
time
60s
ago,
and
right?
70s
60s
that,
and 70s.
I mean, it was the epidemiologists, the statisticians that study populations that really discovered that turmeric was responsible for lower Alzheimer's rates, lower cancer rates, and lower diabetes rates. Because when they looked at all these populations, there were certain populations that just had lower cancer rates, lower diabetes and Alzheimer's. And the only factor that was present in those populations was if turmeric was a daily part of their diet. If they weren't taking 3 to 4 grams of turmeric into their daily dietary intake, then you had these lower diseases, and everywhere else it was higher. So that started the whole craze. That's why there's 19,000 plus published articles about turmeric.
And as Adam will tell you, when they dialed into the turmeric root, it's a rhizome, really only about 3% of that is what they call curcuminoids. And there's actually, I think, about 5 of them, Adam? Three? Okay, 3 of them. And that's only 3% of turmeric, but they found that to kind of be the active agent that was responsible for these unique changes in people's bodies and health. And so, enter Adam and his guys, and well, actually, enter me. I have a dear friend that I've been in business with for a number of years. Adam and I occasionally would attend a morning men's group, prayer, hanging out, talking, men together. And I had kept missing him. He'd been there when I wasn't there. I'd been there. And my friend goes, Josh, I met this guy the other morning, and they're doing some really interesting things out at Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation. They're working actually with curcumin, which my radar went up because I've been into alternative health since I was 16. I'm 61 now. And I got interested, but he said, but he was talking about how individuals that are dealing with pain, which finds its root in inflammation, an unhealthy inflammatory response in the body, that is what's triggering the pain. And as they begin to give this invention, this technology that Adam invented, because Adam is the guy that had the idea, how do we take this liquid, which is hard to ship around and it tastes yucky and people don't want to chug a bunch of it every day. And so he's the one that had that interesting God drop when he was dropping the material on his finger and watching it bind to proteins in his skin. And you drop this liquid on your finger, 7 days later, even with a bleach wipe, you're going to have a little bitty yellow stain there because it just instantly has this affinity. That's one of the patents that they filed and received. So I thought, I've got to meet this guy. Well, rewind the tape a little bit for me. I had the pleasure of being a part of a 2-man startup, and our primary product was a product that people would use to relieve pain that was applied topically. A variety of different natural ingredients. We had a dear friend of ours that made it here, right here in Oklahoma. We ended up with well over 1 million active customers that were blown away by our product. But during that period of time, I got to learn what pain does to marriages, what pain does to a person's ability to work, what it does for their ability to relate to their children or their grandkids, their spouses, their brothers, sisters. Pain just takes everything down to this horrible common denominator, and it debilitates people, and it changes the way they even think about life. Adam knows because he struggles with something that even our curcumin doesn't help. It's a difficult thing that he's going through. But when I went and met with Adam, and we got to talking, and I knew about curcumin, but I didn't know that it was, I've been seeing it everywhere. But all of a sudden, we're faced with the idea of, wow, Adam has this material he's been giving away in capsule form to friends. And oftentimes, the very next morning, they're calling him. And of course, he's got a pharmaceutical background. And it's like, Adam, you didn't give me a drug, did you? It's like, why? And it's like, because I got out and worked in my garden yesterday for 5 hours, moved things around, raked leaves, hadn't done that in years, and I didn't pay any price, and I woke up this morning without any stiffness. Now, this is just shocking news. When I began to hear these stories, I'm like, I have to meet this guy. So we get together and we're talking, and as he's educating me about curcumin, I realize, oh my goodness, how in the world do you separate yourself as you're bringing this unique invention to market that can change people's lives in such a short period of time? How do we distinguish ourselves from the others out there? Well, we came up with the idea, hey, wait a minute. I did a little discovery interview with Adam, and I found out that people taking the original UltraCur product, the orange lid, I think that's probably sitting on a shelf back there, if they would take 2 capsules twice a day, they would experience a transformational result if they have been dealing with discomfort, stiffness, pain. And so we've done a huge sampling program at my previous company, and it had been so successful to differentiate us from other topical pain relievers out there. So we came up with the idea, made up these cool little envelopes, sealed them up, and I said, I know what I'm going to do, Adam. I'm going to go out to compounding pharmacists, master herbalists, licensed clinical nutritionists, MDs, osteopaths, integrative and functional medicine specialists, nurse practitioners, and I'm going to drop off enough product to them to give to 5 of their patients. And I'm going to tell them, don't give this to anyone that has occasional pain. Give this to individuals that are dealing with daily chronic pain. And from my standpoint, the worse, the better. We really want to see how this works. Will you participate in this with us? And so I went and I told them, I won't leave you this free product unless you will promise me to test it on 5 of your patients or customers. We went to a few independent health food stores as well. I had people calling me, Logan, for orders 5 days after that, because they began to give it to coworkers that were in pain, give it to their spouse, give it to their grandpa, their mom, their dad, and immediate results were taking place for individuals. And so that's what became our mantra for distinguishing ourselves from the other products out there is, don't believe us, try it and see for yourself if results are going to happen in a short window. Now, my personal story is kind of interesting because when Adam and I first met, I said nothing to him about the fact, you can kind of see I'm slender, you know, try to take care of myself, don't drink soda pop, eat a real clean diet, take a lot of supplements. I'd been experiencing 5 years of inflammation that was manifesting in some pretty intense pain in my hips. Even sitting in a cushioned chair like this for about 5 minutes, if I was doing this interview back then, I would have gotten up and started to stretch. Car trips were just an abomination. They really, really hurt. So when we were leaving our first meeting, he's like, hey, you want to take a bottle with you? And I said, sure. And I thought, I am going to kick the tires on this stuff and see if these stories are true. I started taking it. Now, I'm an outlier. It took me 5 days, but I think he and I met on a Tuesday, and by a Saturday, I was basically pain-free in my hips and was completely shocked. Couldn't even in my mind reconcile, why is this happening? How did this work like that? It's not a drug. I don't have any side effects, unwanted side effects in any way. The end of that story, though, is I used to ride motorcycles a lot and do stupid things in cars when I was a teenager.
Say it's not so.
I did. And I wrecked a few times. And so I had a shoulder that for about 17 years, I had been told by doctors, you let me give you steroid shots, which I didn't want and didn't take. And they said, and your only other alternative is rotator cuff surgery. Wasn't going to let anybody cut on me, Logan. And I used to love working out with weights. I had lost so much strength in this arm, probably about 40 to 50%. And it was one of those weird things where I loved to sleep on my right side, couldn't sleep on my right side, only intermittently over this 17-year period of time. If I moved real quick to grab something that fell or something, it's like, you're going to pay a horrible price. Couldn't reach over the back seat to pick up my briefcase out of the back. I'd have to get out of the car.
We get it.
It was a drag. 2 weeks later, I was experiencing no popping in my shoulder. It was so strange. And then I began to kind of test the waters. And basically, I'm about 95% strength back in this. I can reach out and pick up 40 pounds now, you know, throw a sack of garbage or leaves into something with one arm. I could not do that. Yeah. And so I had this profound experience with it. And fortunately, our individuals out in the field that began to get this product just began to give it away to their customers.
Experience the same thing.
And literally, a lean startup company didn't have a lot of money for advertising, really no money for advertising. all of a sudden organically, and then doctors get interested. Adam met a doctor on an airplane, beautiful guy from here in Oklahoma City. He went to an international symposium of all these doctors in Lauenfurt, Germany, about 200 people from about 40 different countries. And he said, Adam, can I talk about your stuff? I'm that impressed with it. And from there, it just kind of began to grow and blossom for us. It's remarkable.
I know from our limited experience, because honestly we haven't had it very long here at the market, but it is verbatim what y'all are saying. It has been our experience. I wanted to hit on another thing real quick. So the kind of the standard treatment for pain is NSAIDs and opioids, right? And so what I am so
And
excited
steroids.
about is and steroids is an option for people to at least check out, to say, hey, these, because we know there's negatives from, mitochondrial dysfunction with NSAIDs, the opioid dependency, constipation, blah 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 blah. All right, we know. So the side effects scare me as a parent, as a son, to see my family go through it. So to have an option that they're saying, hey, I'm not having the pain and I'm not needing these other things, is a big deal for me.
So, curcumin works in a very different mechanism from anything else. It's called the scientific term is pleiotropic. It means it interacts with a whole bunch of things, but if you can get it in a molecular form and you can get it into your body, then it will interact with something inside the cells called the NF-kappa beta site inside the cells. And that is the mechanism by which, it's the throttle. It's like the gas pedal inside your cell. The gas pedal tells the cell how inflamed it is or how much inflammation is going on around it. So when you have inflammation that is not healthy, out of balance, like from arthritis, like from a sports injury, it will actually shift the cell from unhealthy inflammation to a healthy inflammation. We call it a Th1 to Th2 response. The Th1 is the attack, right? And I'll give an example. Let's say, we've all been hit in the head with a baseball bat or a ball or something like that. What happens?
Goose egg.
A goose egg. You know what's inside that goose egg is not filled with liquid. That goose egg is filled with millions and millions of immune cells that have rushed into that area looking for a fight. In fact, if you look at the capillaries, they express these little Velcro adhesion molecules. And when the immune cells that are just naturally in circulation in our body see that Velcro, they roll through the capillaries and into that space. Isn't that amazing? So really what's happening, that is a perfect example of the immune response. The body is saying there's damage here. The cells scream out their 911 call. We're hurt. And then the immune system sends in the first responders. What happens in inflammation in our joints, in our tissues, when we're hurting, is the body is doing the same immune response. It's sending in immune cells looking for a fight. Curcumin throttles back that signal. It tells the cells, stop sending for the cavalry. Let's start to rebuild the tissue. And so it reestablishes homeostasis in our joints, in our tissues. We call it helping our bodies achieve healthy inflammation or a healthy homeostasis. And so when you get curcumin into there, it's not specifically targeting the COX-1 or the COX-2. It's not a steroid like telling your body to go into overdrive and, because you're in a flight or fight situation in the tissues. It's not a drug telling you to ignore the pain, which just causes more damage, right? It's actually going in there and helping your cells achieve a healthy status in terms of their inflammation response. The key is getting it in there.
Yeah. So Logan, we've had the privilege, because Adam being a researcher, and then that beautiful event that took place when, Dr. Brian Frank, who's on our medical advisory board, went to Germany and spoke with these doctors. Adam had the privilege of getting over there 1 year as well. We have this network of opinion leaders and even key opinion leaders in the integrative and functional medicine space. And as we've done radio interviews with a number of these people, one of the favorite questions that I love to ask is, okay, you doctors that we're speaking with right now, in your opinion, how much of the disease that we suffer with worldwide is tied to what Adam was just talking about, this unhealthy inflammatory response that people are stuck in? He'll even tell you in a little bit about subclinical inflammation and what that means. The answers have astonished Adam and I both, because our own medical advisory board, Dr. Brian Frank, instantly said 92%. Sitting next to him was a guy named Shailesh Kaushal, who's a brilliant eye surgeon, American Fellow of College Nutrition, key opinion leader, been a consultant to many of the big pharmaceutical companies out there. He didn't blink an eye and said, Josh, in my humble opinion, at least 99%.
I don't agree with him, but I don't agree. But it's everywhere. Inflammation is the primary driver for most human disease: cardiovascular disease, kidney disease, Alzheimer's. Most of the human diseases that people deal with have an inflammation component to it. I'll give an example. Cardiovascular disease is when plaque builds up inside our arteries and our veins, right? That plaque buildup is an inflammation response. The body is essentially, there's an inflammation going on in the wall of the artery. The artery protects itself by creating a plaque shield there as the immune cells embed inside of that artery wall. And then it creates a bony surface, to protect itself, so to keep the circulation open. So we call it subclinical inflammation. That subclinical inflammatory response, because of our wonderful American diet, because of the damage that we cause to our bodies, and because we don't take care of ourselves, that those plaques build up over time. What we learned also, because I studied rheumatoid arthritis for a long time, is that inflammation in our joints and in different tissues, inflammation in those tissues will actually leak over into our circulation. So if you have rheumatoid arthritis, or if you have Sjogren's or lupus or psoriatic arthritis, that inflammatory signal actually leaks out of those tissues and gets into our circulation, causing inflammation everywhere. That's why people with rheumatoid arthritis have a lifespan that's 7 to 10 years shorter than other people. It's because of the cardiovascular risk and the brain risk and all these other tissues. Yeah. It's crazy.
I think you hit on such a important point, that it is such a wide range. It is lifestyle, it's diet, it's a lack or maybe too much exercise, it's not having the micronutrients or other supplements that you really can't get unless you take a supplement. So just bringing awareness by having these type of interviews, being able to deal with the specialists, the experts in any given field. So y'all are one of a wide range that I do, is so important, because I feel people need to be able to make their own decisions on how they want to deal with their life or whatever effects that they have, and how to get over them. So guys, thank y'all so much for taking the time. I am an absolute believer in the product. I'm excited that our paths have crossed, and I fully anticipate visiting with y'all again.
So if I have a recommendation for your listeners here. So if they're just looking for subclinical inflammation, healthy benefit, if they feel good, one capsule of UltraCur twice a day will do wonders for blood chemistry and subclinical inflammation. And if people want to try the product, I know you have free samples.
Yep.
2 capsules twice a day of our original formula. Within 2 to 3 days, most people will either have a dramatic experience or it won't help. It's really true.
Yeah, I can't emphasize enough. Adam just now sucked my thoughts out of my brain for our parting thought, because so much of the time when people are taking our product, Logan, they have come because they've had another powerful recommendation from a friend or loved one they trust that has said, this relieved my pain. But I really want to tag into Adam's thought there. Do you want a better quality of life? Would you like to potentially avoid some of these devastating diseases that happen as we age? Gosh, I don't believe that there is a supplement out there that is a magic bullet or a panacea. But in my, gosh, what now? It's been 36, 38 years of being in this arena and loving these kinds of things. This has come the closest to me for something that will affect, liver enzymes levels. It will affect the oxidative stress in the heart. It will affect the overall inflammatory markers in the body. Your listeners, I would challenge them to get on PubMed.gov, PUBMED.gov, and type in curcumin in any disease, and it's probably been studied.
Yeah.
And they'll find out it's amazing, but then they'll find out if you don't get that curcumin in the bloodstream in a molecular form that attaches to the cell receptor, you're not going to see these kind of results.
Right. Thank you.
Hey,
Josh,
thanks
Adam.
for,
Great.
thanks
Thanks,
for having us.
Logan. Appreciate
And
you.
I'll visit with y'all soon, and we'll keep spreading the good news.
We look forward to it. Thanks.
Thanks, Josh. Thank you. Thanks, Logan.